People often wonder why some seem to effortlessly achieve their desires, while others face insurmountable challenges year after year. The harsh reality is that one's weaknesses are not just minor flaws. They are insidious, hidden destroyers, relentlessly working against them daily. Most people tend to believe that weakness is merely an inherent character trait. This perception, however, is mistaken. Weakness, in essence, is a conscious choice. And with each passing day that one chooses to remain weak, they condemn themselves to powerlessness. The great thinker Machiavelli deeply understood a truth that modern society diligently tries to obscure. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you really are. The world around us is not inclined to reward noble aspirations or good intentions. On the contrary, it generously rewards strength, well-thought-out strategy, and tangible results. Today, we will reveal how to precisely identify the weaknesses that steadily undermine one's life, and how to eradicate them before they destroy everything one works hard for. However, before delving into this, it's worth asking a provocative question. What if everything one was taught about being exceptionally kind and endlessly patient was designed solely to keep them under constant control? Let's proceed. First, weakness is a result of programming, not a natural predisposition. Weakness is not something one is born with. It is something meticulously and purposefully ingrained into one's mind from the earliest childhood. Just consider. Literally from the first years of life, society persistently teaches one to invariably apologize, even when not at fault. To prioritize the needs of others, neglecting one's own desires. Never to assert one's interests, as it's supposedly impolite. To settle for mediocrity, because everyone is doing their best anyway. To await approval or permission to pursue one's deepest dreams. To feel guilty for aspiring to more than others have. This approach is not true education, but deliberate programming. Its main goal is to shape submissive, easily predictable individuals who wouldn't dare challenge the established system. One only needs to observe how this deep programming manifests in daily life. They check their phone immediately after waking, thereby allowing the priorities and needs of others to seize their thoughts before they can even define their own priorities for the day. They take on commitments they don't need, simply because saying no feels awkward. Yet every yes to what they don't want inevitably becomes a no to what they genuinely desire. They modestly downplay their significant achievements because they don't want others to feel uncomfortable, essentially punishing themselves for their own success. They shy away from difficult but necessary conversations, thereby allowing minor issues to escalate into catastrophic proportions instead of addressing them early when they are still easily manageable. Sometimes, it seems people are programmed for passivity and manageability. The great thinker Niccolò Machiavelli once astutely observed, "A lion cannot protect himself from traps, and a fox cannot defend himself from wolves. Therefore, one must be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." However, as life experience shows, many people, unfortunately, have been taught to be neither. They have been programmed not to be predators, but rather prey, objects of someone else's manipulation. Every time one avoids direct confrontation, every time they agree to terms that are clearly inferior to their true worth, and every time they find excuses for those who show disrespect, they unwittingly reinforce these destructive programs within themselves. These behavioral patterns take root, shaping a specific mindset. The most insidious and dangerous aspect of such programming is that it makes one genuinely believe that choosing oneself, one's interests, and well-being is a manifestation of selfishness. It instills that having high standards and demands for oneself and others is something reprehensible, and the aspiration for more, the desire to grow and reach new heights, is perceived as blatant greed. Notably, the people who actively propagate and impose these rules often do not follow them themselves, and successful individuals in one's circle achieve their position not through endless compliance or submissiveness, but, on the contrary, by knowing how to assert their positions. However, there is good news. Once one recognizes the existence of this programming, they gain the ability to deactivate and rewrite it. The first step is a critical reevaluation of everything one was taught regarding so-called politeness and compliance. It's important to ask oneself, Does this acquired belief truly serve my goals and development, or does it merely keep me within imposed boundaries? When someone advises to be a realist, it's worth considering. Are these people protecting one from potential failures, or are they, rather, protecting themselves from one's possible success, which might disrupt their own equilibrium? And when, in the process of becoming stronger and more self-assured, others start saying, "You're changing," this should be perceived as a compliment, a sign of progress, not a criticism. Second, it is crucial to understand that weakness, as a rule, turns an individual into a target. Allow me to state a thought that might sound quite shocking to some. In the real world, essentially, there are only two main types of people. One type actively pursues what they want, taking what they need, showing initiative and persistence. The other type settles for the leftovers, for what remains after the first group has taken theirs. One's weaknesses are not just personal flaws or harmless character traits. They are, rather, giant neon signs, brightly flashing for everyone around and unequivocally communicating. This individual is easily manipulated. They are open for exploitation. These signals are perceived on a subconscious level, creating a specific dynamic in interactions. Consider, for example, a workplace situation. Who, as a rule, gets promotions and career advancement? It is often not the person who works the hardest, spending long hours completing tasks in the hope that their efforts will be noticed. On the contrary, it is usually the individual who knows how to strategically position themselves, their achievements, and their contributions. It is not the employee who stays late every night, silently hoping their diligence will be recognized. It is the person who actively ensures their contribution is visible, their value to the company is undeniable, and their voice is heard. Similar dynamics manifest in personal relationships. Who has more power and influence in a relationship? It is often not the partner who shows more care, love, or affection, sacrificing their interests for the sake of the other. It is, rather, the person who is internally prepared to leave if their boundaries are violated, or their needs are not met. It is not the individual who submissively accepts any treatment, simply because they fear being alone. It is the partner who fully recognizes their worth and firmly demands appropriate respect. What happens when one demonstrates compliance? Others immediately begin to test their boundaries, pushing a little further each time to see how far they can go and how much one can tolerate. Their opinions may be ignored in meetings because colleagues realize this individual won't assert their stance. Their personal time is often perceived as less valuable than everyone else's, as they never show sufficient firmness in defending it. Their goals are mocked or devalued because people know they won't be able to defend them with sufficient resolve and conviction. The unpleasant truth is that people rarely respect what they can easily subjugate to their will. True reverence is reserved for what remains beyond their direct influence. The renowned thinker Machiavelli once observed, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." This is by no means a call to cruelty. Rather, it means being someone whose personal boundaries cannot be violated without inevitable repercussions and consequences. To command a certain respect does not mean that others experience ordinary fear towards one. It means they acknowledge the norms and standards one has established, and know that they will adhere to them strictly. It implies that they will carefully weigh their actions before disregarding one's personal time. It indicates that they will pre-analyze possible reactions before attempting to violate one's boundaries. And finally, it means they highly value one's judgments, understanding that they are not expressed thoughtlessly or hastily. When one shows compliance, they not only harm themselves, they unwittingly accustom others to disrespectful treatment. Every time they tolerate disrespect, they teach people that disrespect towards them carries no consequences. Their insecurity turns into an advantageous opportunity for others. Their hesitation becomes another's superiority. Their fears give others leverage over them. And here's the most regrettable aspect. Once people learn they can control someone, they completely lose all respect for that individual. Even if they undoubtedly benefit from their weakness, they secretly harbor deep contempt for it. Third, the insidious trap of complacency keeps one in a state of defenselessness. Comfort is the irreconcilable antagonist of true greatness. Most people prefer to take the path of least resistance, choosing a predictable trajectory, a path where they don't have to face their inner fears. And for this very reason, they find themselves trapped in circumstances they utterly dislike. Complacency breeds vulnerability because it deprives an individual of the need for continuous development and growth. In conditions of constant ease, one never manages to develop the inner strengths and qualities so vital for overcoming true life challenges. One only needs to look around to notice a striking pattern. How many people they know continue to live exactly the same life as 5 years ago? The same professional activity, the same unresolved difficulties, the same familiar excuses, the same self-imposed limitations. Such a state of affairs is by no means a coincidence or a whim of fate. It is nothing other than the result of all-consuming comfort that shackles them. However, behind the seeming well-being of comfort lies a genuine and very high price. It is in the zone of the familiar and convenient that human potential slowly dwindles. Daily, by choosing the path of least resistance, an individual effectively makes a choice in favor of maintaining the current state of affairs. Dreams do not vanish suddenly, as in a dramatic act. They fade gradually, silently, with each successive choice dictated by the pursuit of comfort. In conditions of complete comfort, skills also degrade. Just as physical muscles require regular exertion and resistance to maintain their strength and tone, so too do mental faculties demand constant challenges. When one systematically avoids confronting difficult circumstances, their ability to effectively cope with them inevitably weakens, making them less adaptable to hardships. Concurrently, in an atmosphere of excessive comfort, self-confidence also diminishes. A genuine sense of self-worth and capability stems exclusively from the experience of overcoming significant difficulties and subsequently achieving success. When one limits themselves solely to easy and predictable tasks, they gradually begin to doubt their abilities, losing faith in their capacity to handle anything truly challenging. Along with this, within the embrace of comfort, the most promising opportunities seem to dissolve. For the most significant and transformative chances are always inextricably linked with a certain degree of risk and unpredictability. Those individuals who diligently avoid any discomfort inevitably pass by unique circumstances capable of fundamentally altering the trajectory of their lives. As the great Machiavelli once aptly noted, whoever wishes to foresee the future must consult the past, for human events ever resemble those of preceding times. This wise thought proves true again and again. The pattern of events remains unchanged. Those who persistently avoid any manifestation of discomfort today are thereby laying the groundwork for much greater suffering and difficulties that will inevitably befall them in the future. Examples of such detrimental choices are easy to find in everyday life. An individual who constantly shies away from difficult but necessary conversations condemns themselves to relationships that gradually erode their self-respect. One who fears taking career risks ultimately witnesses younger, more ambitious, and energetic colleagues rapidly surpass them professionally. A person who avoids physical discomfort eventually discovers that their body is no longer capable of matching their life aspirations and ambitions. And one who constantly evades emotional experiences and difficulties ultimately lives a life that, while seemingly safe and predictable, is actually devoid of depth and inner fulfillment. Any successful, admirable person possesses one key, unifying trait. These individuals have masterfully learned to feel calm and confident even in the most uncomfortable situations. They made that very phone call that instilled inner fear. They did not shy away from engaging in difficult but vitally important dialogues. They took steps that others unanimously called risky and rash. They invested their resources in their own development even when, seemingly, they couldn't afford it. They began to act long before they felt fully ready. While most chose the coziness and familiarity of comfort, these people invariably chose development and relentless forward movement. It is the pursuit of self-improvement and personal development that becomes their priority. The more actively one consciously embraces inconvenience and discomfort in the name of achieving their goals, the more paradoxically comfortable and ordered their life ultimately becomes. This happens because, in the process of overcoming difficulties, an unshakable self-confidence is formed, and necessary skills are honed, enabling one to successfully confront any challenges life presents. Fourth, 4 lies that can destroy inner strength. It's time to expose 4 fundamental misconceptions that undermine one's inner strength and strip them of the ability to influence their own destiny. Lie number 1 states, "Good things come to those who wait." This assertion is false. In reality, success and favorable opportunities come to those who act decisively. While one waits for the opportune moment, someone else, more decisive and swift, seizes the opportunities that could have been theirs. Lie number 2 asserts, "Everyone deserves respect." In reality, respect must be earned, not given by default. When one shows respect to those who haven't earned it, they unwittingly diminish their own significance and value. Lie number 3 states, "Just be yourself, and people will love you." This is not entirely accurate. An inauthentic, fabricated version of oneself attracts the wrong kind of people into one's life. A true, authentic version of oneself may cause discomfort for some, and that is precisely how one should be. Genuine. Lie number 4. Everything happens for a reason. This is the quintessence of a victim mentality. In reality, events in the world are a direct consequence of one's own decisions and actions. As Machiavelli once noted, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you really are." It is important to stop projecting an image of weakness by succumbing to these false beliefs. Each of these lies serves the same insidious purpose: to keep one in a state of passivity, forcing them to adopt a waiting stance and rely on others for their own success. Fifth, replacing emotion with cold calculation. This is where the reason most people fail lies. They tend to make decisions driven by momentary emotions and then, post factum, try to find logical justifications for them. However, people who achieve significant success operate on a completely different principle. They first formulate logically sound decisions, and only then consciously manage their emotional reactions, aligning them with the chosen course. When someone shows disrespect towards them, the emotional impulse dictates, "Get angry." But their rational calculation should dictate, "What reaction will best serve my long-term interests?" When someone presents them with a new opportunity, the inner voice of emotions might whisper, "What if it fails?" Their calculation should say, "What is the true ratio of potential risk to possible reward?" When someone tries to manipulate them, emotions might suggest, "Perhaps there's some truth in their words." However, their rational calculation should clearly articulate, "What is their true objective, and what are they trying to get from me?" Emotional decision-making undermines one's well-being. They react to circumstances instead of thoughtfully responding to them. Reactions are typically automatic and often turn against oneself, whereas responses are always carefully considered and strategically calibrated. An emotionally driven person makes decisions based on momentary feelings, not on what will benefit them in the long term. Feelings can change hourly, but their consequences can last for years. Such an approach makes one easily readable. When others know exactly how one will react emotionally, they can use these emotional surges to achieve their goals by manipulating their behavior. Ultimately, they squander their energy on meaningless confrontations. Emotions have a way of lending an air of extreme urgency and lasting significance to everything, even when that is far from the truth. However, a thoughtful calculation fundamentally transforms one's approach to life. Before reacting to any situation, one asks, "What outcome do I truly desire here?" Before taking any action, one deeply considers, "How will this impact my situation 6 months from now?" Before engaging with difficult individuals, one decides, "Is this worth my time and energy, or am I merely indulging my ego?" Niccolò Machiavelli once observed, "A wise man does immediately what a fool does." Herein lies the fundamental difference. The wise person first calculates all options, then acts. The fool, however, reacts first, then reaps the bitter fruits of their ill-considered actions. This does not mean one should become heartless or unfeeling. It means that emotions should be used as valuable information, not as the primary driver for decision-making. One's emotions indicate what is important, and one's calculation suggests how to achieve it. For instance, one's emotions might indicate that someone's behavior crosses a boundary. One's calculation suggests how to most productively correct the situation. One's emotions might signal keen interest in a certain opportunity. One's calculation determines whether it's truly worth investing effort and time into it. One's emotions might tell them that someone has offended or hurt them. One's calculation helps discern whether a confrontation will truly resolve the situation or merely provide temporary relief for their ego. Most people act quite differently. They allow their emotions to govern their decisions and then wonder why they face recurring problems. They respond with a fit of anger when someone disrespects them, only escalating the confrontation instead of resolving it. They make career decisions based on fear, rather than on a sober analysis of prospects. They remain in bad relationships because leaving them is frightening due to the unknown, even though staying in them promises only unending suffering. 6. The power of strategic detachment. Here's what can fundamentally change the course of events for anyone. As soon as one becomes overly attached to any specific outcome, they paradoxically lose the ability to effectively influence that very result. The reason is that such attachment makes them predictable. And predictable people, as is well known, are significantly easier to manipulate. When an individual desperately seeks someone's approval, they effectively hand over control of themselves to the one who can grant or withhold that approval. If a person is deeply invested in wanting a specific job, the employer gains an undeniable advantage in negotiations, possessing a full arsenal of leverage. In personal relationships, excessive attachment to preserving them can lead the other partner to feel impunity and engage in inappropriate behavior, knowing there will be no serious consequences for them. Strategic detachment means that one sincerely strives for the best possible outcome, yet is internally prepared to accept any possible result without losing their composure or ability to act. Machiavelli once shrewdly observed, "A given promise was a necessity of the past. A broken word is a necessity of the present." This statement underscores the critical importance of constant adaptation and having room to maneuver. It implies that one should always have alternative paths and opportunities. One should never become dependent on a single decision or a single person whose word can shatter all carefully laid plans. It is always necessary to have backup options, be it Plan B, C, or even D, to ensure freedom of action and maintain control over one's destiny. When one does not display desperation, they are capable of making significantly more balanced and rational decisions. When one does not show neediness, those around them automatically begin to feel greater respect. Freedom from the shackles of rigid attachment to specific outcomes grants true liberty to take the steps and actions that genuinely lead to desired achievements. 7. Become the consequence. This is the final and perhaps most significant lesson. One should stop trying to justify themselves to those who are not initially inclined to understand or grasp the essence. There is no point in explaining one's decisions to people who will never have to face their real consequences or bear responsibility for them. It is necessary to stop apologizing for one's presence in a world that, perhaps, desperately needs the unique gifts and opportunities one is capable of offering. An individual does not come into this world to make others comfortable with their success. Their task is not to diminish their achievements or shrink themselves so that others might feel more significant. And one certainly should not apologize for the natural and perfectly healthy desire to strive for more from life. Machiavelli once wisely stated, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." The true value of a person is not determined by the opinions, judgments, or evaluations of others. It stems solely from how one manages their allotted time and what actions they take throughout their life. One should become the kind of person who does not need to loudly declare their strength. Their presence and influence are felt by everyone without exception. It is necessary to become someone whose worth does not require constant proof, for their achievements and results speak eloquently for themselves. And finally, to become one who is not obliged to defend their decisions and choices, as their success serves as the best and most convincing defense. When one truly gains and demonstrates inner power, they have no need to feign strength. When they genuinely radiate confidence, there is no longer any need for its demonstrative confirmation. And when success becomes an integral part of their being, they do not need to convince others of their achievements. They become an undeniable fact, a force that others are compelled to reckon with. This manifests not through aggressive imposition of will or demonstration of superiority, but through the unshakable reality of the image one has consciously chosen for themselves. Within this narrative, it was revealed that weakness represents much more than just a deficit of personal qualities. It was presented as a strategically significant flaw impacting absolutely all aspects of human existence. The reader gained insight into how societal institutions, from the earliest years, shape and reinforce this weakness in people, turning them into easily manageable and predictable individuals. It was explained why excessive comfort becomes an insurmountable obstacle to development, and why embracing discomfort is an essential condition for personal growth. The 4 fundamental lies that keep the vast majority of people in a state of powerlessness throughout their lives were also exposed. Recommendations were provided for replacing impulsive emotional reactions with cool-headed strategic calculation. The true power of detachment was unveiled, and it became clear why a feeling of desperation can completely undermine one's influence. And finally, the path was shown to becoming a true consequence, an individual whose very presence can transform the atmosphere of any room they enter. However, it is important to emphasize that such a path of transformation does not imply becoming a heartless or ruthless person. On the contrary, it is about acquiring inner strength, strategic thinking, and unwavering determination in the pursuit of the life that rightfully belongs to everyone. One's own weakness is not an inherent essence. It is merely an ingrained habit that can and should be changed. The call to action was clear. This transformation should begin immediately, today.